welcome to Peter Hongaard, Executive Vice President for Lundbeck. Peter, thank you very much for joining us today. Earlier today, you described partnership as an integral part of Lundbeck efforts towards mental health. How do you see the role of partnership in increasing treatment for brain disorders?
So, in brain disorders, the first thing I want to mention here is that what most people are not aware of is that economically, this is the biggest healthcare burden at all in society. And the reason why most people are not aware of it is that they very rarely see the total cost. But anyway, if you integrate everything, this is actually the biggest burden of all healthcare challenges we have. If we then go from you could say, the burden on society directly, then to address this, we actually need a number of things to fall in place. First of all, understanding the disease better tools to actually treat the diseases, better tools to evaluate the effect of treatment, better tools and communication around prevention of disease, etc., etc. So all of these is such big burdens that I can't see that any of the stakeholders here can do it alone, neither the industry nor society alone. So the only way I see going forward here is that we simply have to do it together.
What are the biggest challenges for the pharmaceutical industries in this disease area?
So it's important to understand that diseases in the brain traditionally has not been considered to be linked to biology. It's been kind of linked to the soul of your body. So for many years nobody was actually conducting research in figuring out or dissecting the biology behind the disease. So this means that the classification of a lot of the brain diseases is based on conventional symptomatology, which dates back 100 years in some cases, even more. And actually very few of these diseases at all is defined based on biology. And if you're not defined your disease based on biology, then you are lacking the simplest tool. This means understanding of what targets to go for when you make new medicines, biomarkers, how do you actually measure people are getting better, etc., etc. So it's a huge task to actually address this. And my belief is that we cannot do this alone as industry. It requires that stakeholders come together and work together to address this.
Thank you very much. What is the role of prevention and stigma reduction efforts to tackle brain disorders?
I think if we take the stigma first, it's very clear that a lot of the brain disorders or brain diseases are linked to, you could say, very severe stigma. And I think this requires a general public effort to understand that to get a brain disease is actually no different from breaking a leg. But you just have to recognize that because you're sad for a prolonged period of time, it's not something you have to accept. You have to come out of the woods, so to speak, and accept that this is a disease, like breaking a leg, as I mentioned before. And somehow it requires, I would say, a major public effort to understand that we have to break this stigma, otherwise we can't really do something serious about it.
Estimates suggest that over the next 2 decades, the global burden of disease is going to rise exponentially. How do you think this scenario is affecting research?
As I mentioned earlier, science-wise, the brain diseases are not as well understood as a lot of other diseases. And furthermore, the tools to actually evaluate the effect of new medicines is not as advanced as you see them in other areas. So altogether, it's a bigger task to develop CNS or brain medicines. And average it takes about 13 years, and it actually costs something between 1 billion and 1.5 billion euros to develop these medicines. And it's a huge cost. On top of that, it's more risky to develop CNS medicines or brain medicines. So typically the risk is twice as big in this area as it averages in other areas together. So my message here is to society, wake up, you need to do something about it, otherwise this burden is going to be very, very big for you going forward.